really get into it, you can really kind of disaggregate your data by all these different ways.
Mm-hmm.
Can you make your data table based off the things that they have on there?
That's
so like
what I want to know. Can I just copy paste their data tables and just cite? Because they make it into pretty tables. They also make it into graphs for you. Like,
I think when I read the handbook, I think you can update any kind of data that you have. So I don't think it has, I think the example that was given was the CAST data, which makes sense. So it's all demographics, but if you have any sort of data, because it even said it would allow like teachers have their own class data. So like, how would we represent each demographic in that sense, you know?
So
I think that anything would be acceptable.
30 pages of tables in there if I really want to.
Because I think if you're just trying to be safe as well, like just fill out what you can of the one they gave you, but of course add your own. I don't think they dock you for having more than for not having what they want.
Well, and it makes sense to me to do the demographics. Like my school's 87.9% Hispanic. And like, I think 2/3-ish of our kids have ever been classified as an English learner. So to me, yeah, it makes sense to plug in the demographics first so you know what you're looking at. It's not like I teach at a school where it's like, oh, English learners are 10% of our population, you know?
Yeah.
Sorry, I share an office. So I have to mask on.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah, I think that's good. And then you just have, I would use their same table if possible, and then add or delete the categories.
Yeah.
On the
and
rows.
then for so I can go back, if you look, like even on the dashboard, there's data for last year, but obviously there's no like CASP scores. So I can show, oh my gosh, the declining enrollment at my site is so ridiculous. Like over 7 years, we've gone from like 1,150 kids to 903. Like it's just, we're just losing kids like crazy.
Right.
So what I was doing in that section is like when I get section 3, it's like
I want to match all my data so it's the same, right?
Yeah, but I think like what you were saying with the enrollment, I think that's more of like the trends that we were talking about. So for my example, I use like socioeconomically disadvantaged students in math specifically. And so the trend at our school was that number of students is growing at our school site, but then also their test scores are declining. So I was making a correlation between those trends. And our school was a little bit different. So we had a site change actually, because we're a charter school. So we had a site change in one of the years. And during that site change, we noticed that the group of socioeconomic disadvantaged students like shot up because we are by location, our proximity was a lot closer and our test scores dropped. So those students weren't necessarily like indicated by what our program was. It was just because our site changed and we were a lot closer. So I was able to make a correlation, I think, between that data.
Super interesting too.
Yeah. So I was trying to like, I think anything will be acceptable. So I had a meeting with her on last Saturday morning and a lot of with Dr. Myra. And we were talking a lot about our thesis statement, but she was really explaining this process also. And she was saying like, this is really so open-ended that the graders will accept almost any correlations that we're able to make. The really important factor is that you're making correlations based on the data that you have. So I necessarily didn't want to write about socioeconomically disadvantaged students in math, but that was just the most like interesting data that I could find at our school site. So I chose to write about that one.
Yeah, I'm kind of in a similar boat. I was wondering if did she mention anything for the student groupings that it had to be like 2 groups? Because I feel like I read that in an example or something where it had to be like female socioeconomic disadvantaged or an ethnicity and like 2 things together, or can it just be what you said?
So I asked her, because I was a little bit confused also, because the example was like African-American students that were male.
Yeah.
Right. And so I asked her that question. She said, as long as you have a grouping of students that you could focus on and that you have actual data for the last 3 years.
Yeah.
So our school site, where's our charter school, it was so small. We had academic American information from last year, but the population was so small the previous years, we didn't have that information.
Yeah,
so
that's
a little bit of an issue.
My school is so white that all the categories are like NA, less than 10.
Yeah. And my data table looks exactly like that.
I also met with her. Was it yesterday, Wednesday? No, 2 days ago. Because for me, I want to do suspension rates. And the only one that's iffy is like African Americans are getting suspended at higher rates. But we only have a 1.3% population. And I asked her and she said, no, they're still being represented, so you can still do your thing about it. And then I asked her if I needed to compare them, not compare them, but if I needed another group to write about, and she said no. She said, as long as you have one focus group, you should be fine.
So you're if I can ask that, then so you're going to compare them to the overall rate, the one group compared to the average or the total rate, so to speak.
Yes,
Okay.
so I'm just comparing it to like, I guess just different groups. I did make like one comparison. Like I was like the next smallest group that we have are like Asian American or Asian students, and yet they have like very limited suspension rates. Like they have very small ones. So I'm trying to make that comparison, saying like, this is a small group, but we also have another small group, and the suspension rates still don't match.
So I assumed that, checking here, that my best bet at my school, because actually the male-female thing is a really tight race, and actually the girls are usually beating them. So that doesn't seem to be a thing exactly, really. But what is the biggest predictor is socioeconomic. So I would take the socioeconomic advantaged versus the non-disadvantaged, and that's really proves the point, doesn't it?
Yeah, but how do you find out the students who are, I guess you can compare the students who are not disadvantaged to find out the number? Because when I was doing my comparison, I used that group, but I compared them to the all student category.
But then
Well, except that they're in their own average. Then the total
Right.
includes it's an overlapping group. So if I take the advantaged versus the non,
Right.
doesn't that
because
prove the
when you
point?
look in
Good
data
point.
compress, they should be able to aggregate that for you.
Yeah, so when I went on it, I was looking at it, and so you could do a variety of different things, but I didn't see like advantage versus disadvantage. I just saw the drop down menu for students who are disadvantaged. I'm sure I can do it mathematically and just take the number of students who are disadvantaged, subtract them from the total, and that would be the
No,
number. But I don't know how to proficiency.
One of those sites has it as a drop down. I
I'm
can
trying
get it.
to pull it right now.
Where was it?
You're looking at those students within what indicator though?
I'm looking at casp-elpac.cde.ca.gov, and in the student group there is academic status, and then under that you have disadvantaged, not disadvantaged from the CASP
Okay.
data.
Then maybe I can adjust my table to not disadvantaged, because then I could see how you'd say like they are part of the overall population anyway. So it'd be more
They're
accurate.
skewing the average toward themselves by definition, right?
You
Right.
want to like separate them if you can, versus like making the group you're focusing on part of your total. That doesn't make sense.
Yeah. It's interesting though, because still the proficiency rate is like 60% compared to I think it was like 47%, so about a 20% decrease, but with all the same structures in place. So I was kind of curious about that.
What did you all end up doing for your qualitative data?
I've been on quarantine for a week now, so I haven't done anything yet. And I don't understand, honestly, it's kind of ridiculous to me looking at this, that this part is due so soon.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Like I said, I met with her on Wednesday, and I was telling her that I was having a hard time with, thinking about like the suspension rates, like who am I, because in the different sites, they just tell you quantitative numbers, like these are the numbers. And then I looked on the LCAP, and there's like 2 lines about what we're doing about our suspension rates. And she made it seem very like, okay, well, go interview like your vice principal. I was like, okay, my vice principal, the 2 lines from the LCAP. And she was like, how many vice principals you have? I was like, 3. And she's like, interview another one. And I was like, wouldn't they give me the same data though? I was a little concerned on that.
Well, also when I was looking at the example, I mean, this part, the step 1 is like pretty short. If you, I mean, in the example.
No, the product is super short, but
Right.
the process is super long.
Yes. So I was wondering for the qualitative, I looked at her table, and it was just like So assistant principal interview. Is that all you submit?
Yep.
Yeah, but there is a section after that where you have to talk about
What
all
they
of the things that you did. Yeah, so that's the easy part, but I think it's like
Okay,
section
I was
2
like-
is the long part. Yeah.
So I was wondering if we like, what questions did you guys come up with when you talked? I guess it depends on what our group is.
I had to, and you have to ask questions that like will give you some of the like qualitative stuff. Because when I was asking her, I was like, okay, what type of questions do I ask? And she was like, what's the process for suspensions? Like, why does the vice principal think that this number is higher than other ethnic groups? It's very like, what do they think? And then you just write about it.
Okay.
But I asked her, I'm like, do I come up with my own questions? Like, what if I don't have the right questions? And she said, you come up with your own questions, make sure that you're asking stuff that will help you formulate a response that looks like the example. So I just asked, I was like, what's the process for suspensions? Why do you think we're getting such higher suspensions for this like group? Like, what are we doing different than we were doing 3 years ago? But
what are the suspendable offenses? I would have asked that. Did you ask like what they're being suspended for?
Yes. And then it seemed a little iffy to me because like I have a great admin team that I was during my prep. I went and I interviewed them, but I was like, this is due Monday, and if you haven't talked to anybody, you gotta talk to somebody.
It's due
Tuesday.
Monday.
Tuesday.
Yeah.
Tuesday, Monday, the
Oh, I
7th.
thought it was due like Thursday or.
Monday.
Okay.
But that's what I'm saying. Like this part, the process takes so long, even though the product is short, like wrapping your head around that and then coming up with questions to ask about it and doing the analysis. Like this part should be the longest because once you've focused it in,
the
other parts are so much easier.
Who did you interview, Taryn?
So for mine, so what I did is I wrote my school's WASC report for the last few years. And so I was able to use the WASC report that I wrote. So it was kind of, I knew it really well, but we had a math goal in our WASC self-study last time. And so I was able to correlate the socioeconomically disadvantaged students with the math goal that we had, which was to have more professional development and higher level of math activities. That was our school site goal. But unfortunately with COVID, we never got around to having a professional development specifically towards math. And so I was able to kind of make a trend statement. And so in 2, I stated that from the WASC. In 3, it asked you to basically compare your qualitative data and what trends you were able to find. And so I was trying to find a trend between we weren't able to accomplish this school goal that we had. And this is why, and then maybe this is why our data point was so much lower. So the student test scores were lower, possibly as a connection or a trend because we didn't fulfill a WASC self-study like school goal that we had.
So you did a WASC and then did you
So I did a WASC self-study, I did a administration interview, and then a teacher observation.
Did you ask most of your questions about math related things or because then you're going to tie it back to the socioeconomic. You're not asking about how are you supporting the socioeconomic students.
Right. It was all about math and I was trying to make it tie into that. Yeah. And so.
Okay.
And then when I did an observation, it was a math lesson and then a small group instruction based on our differentiation.
Right. And I totally did that as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the things that was hard was the small group pullouts that we were having. I figured out that the teachers that are differentiation teachers who are new this year were pooling a lot of resources that they've had from previous schools or that they've just collected off Teachers Pay Teachers and things like that. And so one trend I was able to make was like the consistency rate, and they are not all using the same supplemental curriculum. And so I was able to write about that. So.
And then one more question, just because mine is math and socioeconomics. So I'm like, oh, this is helpful.
Oh, nice. That's such a random group.
Well, my school, like when I look at there's no other big group, like socioeconomics is the biggest group I have. The other ones is I'd have to do SPED, and I didn't really want to do that because they're small.
Right, and their test scores it's hard to compare.
Exactly. Okay, but my other question was, oh, now I lost it. It'll come back to me.
But that is something you could look at for math specifically is the resources and the curriculum that are used, because I found that the inconsistency might have led to different test scores.
Right.
Or at least that's something I could write about.
Yeah, and we do the same thing at my school. We have pullouts and intervention, but we do have a math curriculum. But I was gonna ask, are you using the CASP data then?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, CASP.
Put that in, but my data is from 16, 17, and 18.
My most recent years were 17, 18.
And you did
20, 20, yeah, 2020, yeah, and then 2021, yeah.
Or 21, yeah, because we didn't do.
So we have last year's basically. We have the gap year for COVID, and then we have the 2 years after that.
So I have 2 gap years. So then I had to go back and do 3. So now it's like I'm doing my observations about current practices about students that are like not even at my school anymore.
Yeah, that's hard. That's tough.
But
the same way.
You have to put in the year of your data.
Mm-hmm. I think in the example, I put it right underneath the bracket, just so they saw the 3rd most recent year, the 2nd most recent year, and then the most recent year of data that we have.
Put the actual year date?
Yeah.
I did, yeah.
Also,
I wonder if I have to do that, just because it's going to make it so hard to talk about my qualitative data.
But Dana, everybody understands that. It's not like the pandemic just happened at your school.
Yeah.
It happened in the whole world.
I have the same years as you. I'm doing 16, 17, 18.
Okay.
And how I was able to maneuver it with the interviews and stuff, because I told my principal that, because I interviewed him. He was like, well, you can talk about the changes that we're making now in response to that data that you have.
Okay, yeah. I just didn't know if I should make qualitative questions about what we did in distance, some should I be talking about last year?
You could say pre-pandemic, this was our data, then obviously we went into distance learning. Was this factored in at all into the plans that were made or?
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, cool. That was helpful. Thank you guys.
And then what helped me the most too is looking at the data before you make any of the questions and just seeing if there's already a trend that you can see that you want to highlight, and then what questions can you ask to help highlight that trend. So I wasn't even focused on curriculum at first, but then I was what connection can I possibly make to why these students scored lower?
Hey, Taryn, can you hear me? Oh. Since you seem to be one of the WASC expert types, could you?
Not an expert. I did it.
Compared in this group, you probably are. Comparatively, certainly to me. If you were could you be specific what you would recommend people use their WASC report for? So I'm trying to take a bunch of notes in the background, and partly for myself and partly for everybody else. But even for me, I'm not sure what I would do.
So it might make more sense if you're not familiar with WASC report to use your LCAP, because the LCAP will have 3 specific goals for each school site that are very clearly defined. So if you're not familiar with WASC, maybe your LCAP might be the best bet, because those goals you'll be able to connect to if they work for you. You'll be able to connect those to whatever student group you're focusing on. So I would look first at the LCAP, the 3 specific goals, and see if there's any connection you can make, because that might be easier to write about.
Connection
for WASC,
between
it's going to be
what?
Whatever your student group might be, your data points that you're looking at. So I know you were looking at socially economically disadvantaged students, but I didn't know, is it specifically in a subject?
Whatever the biggest gap is, I think it's math is the biggest gap we've got.
Yeah, so I would just see if there's a math goal within your LCAP that you can kind of tie that to. If there's not, the WASC would be a good next step, but you have to have access. Will be outlined in that document. And then the new one is really short. So the new WASC document's it's 30 pages instead of 60. So I would focus on the newest document if you have it.
I'm really sorry, but I think that got cut off in the recording because it froze on my end. So I really apologize, but could you repeat your last paragraph or so?
Yeah, so I was just saying their newest WASC self-study document has been cut down. It's been modified from 60 pages to 30. So if you're able to get access to your newest self-study, I would start with that document because it's going to be much more concentrated. In the WASC self-study document, you'll have progress towards your school goals that you've made. And this is something that most schools like incorporate their entire staff to help answer. So it'll be a lot of the things that you're like working on as your goals, or things that you've already completed and new goals that you have for your school. So if you look at that document, an example was my school had higher level thinking activities. We wanted to perform more professional developments in those areas. So we had stated those as those are things that we were going to work on. COVID happened, we weren't able to do that, and we haven't done it since. So since it was stated in my WASC report, I just made the connection between like, this was a school-wide goal. We weren't able to complete it. Student scores might be the result of that. So I hope that helps. I know that's confusing, but if you take anything from it, I would look for your most recent WASC document, and it'll be very short, and you'll be able to see within the first 5 pages, you'll see all of your school goals, and they'll be in bullet points. I had a question though, for the research documents, what were people using for that? Because it looked like in question 4, once you get to that point, like a lot of the examples were quoted from the Burke text. And so I didn't know, I was planning on just using the Burke text probably because it was most easily available. But maybe Dana, since you're focusing on math, are you focusing on like a specific piece of literature that focuses on math specifically, or just the Burke text for overall improvement?
I haven't gotten that far, but if I do use something differently, I can let you know.
Okay.
I can think of like, unless I actually go and do like the like searching for, you know, something.
Yeah.
But I can do something that we've read before in our courses.
I was thinking maybe using the book we did in Jackson's class about like America's best schools, especially if you did observations. Like, did you see any of those practices in your observations that you could tie in? And if
do you still have access to that?
I downloaded a whole PDF of it, you guys. So if you need the PDF, I'm your girl.
Yes, can you share that with me? That would be awesome.
I'll send it to you guys in the chat.
Oh, I didn't do that. That's smart.
Yeah.
Oh, because it goes away.
Yeah, I realized that after, I think it was like Vargas closed his class down so fast, and I'm like, in the future, I'm just downloading the books as soon as I can.
Yeah. I had a friend who did this course before me, and she bought all the books like a crazy person. So she gave it to me, and it's like I feel like it's like Christmas. Every time I get a course, I just like pull it out and she has it. It's crazy.
Saved a lot of money. That's nice.
Yeah. I know. I was like, thank you, money, time, and I like reading on the like hardcover anyway.
Yeah.
Am I right that there hasn't been any example given of this fishbone in 618? I finally found that with the mention of it, I didn't know what she was talking about, and I finally went in the textbook. Oh, it's in there, but the example seemed not very relevant to my use of it, and I don't get it.
She seems to be very much like, don't get ahead. Like, so she's not even going to give us the blog post for chapters 2 and 3 until at the very end of the lecture on Tuesday. So she'll probably go over it during the lecture on Tuesday, and then like, but we can't start early on anything because she hasn't told us yet how to do that stuff.
And I've been spending all my time on this other document. I haven't even looked at that class this week. So I hope there's no blog posts or anything like that, but it's taken so much time.
I barely did my intro in chapter 1 blog post like 2 hours ago.
Yeah, I haven't even, there's a research paper I have to do this weekend or whatever that moat was, but I haven't even looked at it.
I hope that there's an example of that fishbone, because I'll tell you, if it wasn't for the examples, I couldn't get through this. What was that?
She said last class, the first class we had, she said we were gonna do an example of a fishbone in lecture, and then we were gonna do one on our own. So I'm sure she'll go over it then. So we just have to do step 1 Monday and then blog post 1 for the 2 Estrada classes.
It was just the one blog post, right? And a response to someone for chapter 1, I
Oh,
think.
we have to respond to somebody?
I don't know. I just read the response. No.
Yeah, I don't think for her class you had to.
That's cool.
But I definitely
Right.
read people's to be like, what am I gonna write on mine?
Yeah. I haven't read it all.
What was the other thing I was just gonna say? The blog post. Oh man, it's Friday afternoon. I'm like, whew. I have a really hard time switching from like school brain to like this school brain.
Yeah.
I like bring my stuff with me. Like I'm gonna like look at it while I'm at my classroom. No.
I have it all right here. It stays closed all week long. Frustrating.
Normally, like after school hours is the only time I work on this stuff.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
otherwise with my kids, like.
Yeah, that's a whole other thing. Oh, I was gonna say, maybe a good research document we could find is something related to like learning loss through the pandemic, like a simple one that you could reference and tie it to math and then tie it to socioeconomically disadvantaged.
Yeah.
I just went on Google Scholar and like just typed it in, so I'll probably look for something there.
And that'll be good too, because I think the trend is like downward anyway. And so anything that we can point to that trend.
And it's actually really cool that you have the 2020 data, because you can see if it goes like, oh,
way down. Yeah.
Yeah. Did it do that?
It did. Yeah, it dropped. But more significant was interesting at our school side, just because we had moved the year right before, it really dropped. So it goes from 47% to 22% and then up to like 36%. So from 47 to 36, there's still a drop, but that 22% when we first moved here, like a huge drop.
Yeah. That's a really cool thing you can tie to too with location.
Yeah. More paragraphs.
I just sent the PDF of the book in the chat. And then I think there's like a place that we can download it as a file too, right? Where the Google Space has its own drive or something.
She sent it in the G chat, not the.
Oh yeah, it's file. Oh, and it's already in there because I sent it. Okay. If you send something in that Spaces chat, I guess it puts it on the files tab too. I'm like totally new to Google Spaces. We don't even have that.
There's a file Spaces? Oh, there is a, oh my gosh, there's a file Spaces.
If you go.
Oh my gosh, you're right.
If you go like Spaces and then files, like anything anyone's ever sent us in the chat is in there as a file.
Cool.
So our handbook's there, I have the book in there.
Very nice. And then Chelsea, I just requested access for it. I think I clicked on it with access.
I thought I had let me check the permission, sorry.
Mine just came up.
The pop-up.
Yeah, it's open. I'll hit download now. Well, I'll assume this will work. Yeah, it wants to open it with my PDF reader. Let's see. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Try again. I mean, I hope I don't get in trouble for downloading it.
Yeah, it's still saying access for. Oh wait, is this? In the chat, I think I'm just sorry. I clicked on the wrong document. I can only see the chat from Dave to everybody. I don't see it in that chat.
It's me, then Brenda, then Chelsea,
in the Google Spaces.
Oh, you posted it in the Google. Okay, I thought you posted it in this chat. Sorry, I was
in this chat too if you want.
Okay, no, that's fine. Sorry.
No, I just figured like once we close this out, at least that chat's always.
All right. Thank you for posting this one too.
Sure.
Cool. Well, thank you, David, for setting this up. It's super helpful.
Oh yeah, well, believe me, I needed it.
Yeah, I think I'm going to need this for another one again. Step 2.
Yeah. I thought I had my little document shared on everyone. No, the Google Doc, because Taryn, you requested it. And
Yeah.
let's see here. What tab is it on?
Okay, yo, I need to go since I'm still at school and I gotta get home at some point.
Yeah, get home.
Oh.
Friday. Bye.
Our
Bye.
school gets out at 3:30.
You're right, Taryn. Thank you. I thought I had anyone with the link, but I did not. There we go.
All right. Well, have a great afternoon. Thank you, guys.
Thank you guys. See you later. Bye.
Bye.